Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight, the story behind the longest-running parade in the country that takes place in Alton. Plus, the invasive longhorned tick was discovered in St. Louis County, prompting investigations across the region. And then the story of Soldiers Memorial, why it was built and how it's changed since the beginning. But first, an exhibit exploring an important battle that happened right here in St. Louis. It's Sunday, and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
From Busch Stadium in downtown St. Louis, welcome to Cardinals baseball as the Cardinals play the second game of a four-game series against the Los Angeles Dodgers.
St. Louis is a baseball town.
Smith corks one into right down the line.
With a long history of epic victories.
Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
But on May 26, 1780, the site of this ball field was the center of a battlefield. And what took place in St. Louis that afternoon reshaped the future of the city and possibly the entire American West. And it all happened in less time than it takes to play a baseball game.
Well, I think most people, when you first say the Battle of St. Louis, think it must have been an American Civil War battle. They come up to me afterwards and say, I never heard of this before.
Probably one of the most significant and underrated battles of the entire American Revolution.
It was the first of only two Revolutionary War battles fought west of the Mississippi, with a legacy that has rippled across 2.5 centuries of American history.
The Battle of St. Louis is one of the reasons why Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan are now part of the United States rather than Canada.
People just don't know about it. And then when they hear about it, they refuse to believe it.
Certainly never learned about it in school, and went to school here in St. Louis, grade school and high school and college. Never remember hearing about it at any of that.
The vast majority of the books written about the American Revolution are written by authors from Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Maryland, Virginia. Gee, I see a pattern there. It's East Coast snobbery.
In St. Louis, a few reminders of the battle still exist, but not many. The only genuine relic that survives is the church bell used to warn the town it was coming under attack. For a long time, the story of the battle itself was under attack.
In the late 19th century, there were historians who denied that it had ever happened. And then the evidence turned up that in fact it had happened, and it turned out to be a much bigger story than anybody had anticipated.
Now, a pair of history detectives is trying to fill in the rest of the blanks, looking for clues buried in ancient documents written in 3 languages, hidden on 2 continents.
It's a completely different set of stories that are just fascinating and that we're still learning about.
The attack on St. Louis was led by the British, but they recruited Native Americans to do most of the fighting.
They knew they had to pick a side. Some of it was trying to make calculated decisions in a way that wouldn't get too many of them killed.
The Battle of St. Louis is a story of keen foresight, vainglorious mistakes, redemption, high hopes, and false hopes.
You have this group that's in bondage. They're listening to this. Liberty, freedom. It sounds really great. I want that too.
The St. Louisans who came under attack that day were outnumbered 3-1, but a surprise, thunderous defense led to their unlikely victory.
Oh, say, can you see?
If St. Louis's ragtag militia had lost the fight at this spot on that day, today, these St. Louisans might be standing for the singing of God Save the Queen at a cricket match instead of a baseball game between St. Louis and Los Angeles, the visiting team from Mexico.
If the British had won the battle at St. Louis, the world would be a different place.
Had St. Louis fallen, maybe we'd still be having tea at 4 o'clock with our pinky in the air.
Don't miss the full story. Watch HEC Media's House of Thunder documentary by scanning the QR code on your screen. Then experience the history in person at the American Revolutionary War in the West exhibit at the St. Charles County Heritage Museum, closing Saturday, May 31st. For more information about the exhibit, visit the website on your screen.
My name's Stephen L. Kling Jr. My small publishing company, THGC Publishing, entered into a partnership with St. Charles County to do a museum exhibit on the American Revolutionary War in the West. The idea here was that a few years ago, I wrote a book on the Battle of St. Louis and talked to a lot of people that wanted to know more. So I gathered a group of authors from the US and Spain, and we wrote a book, and this exhibit is based on that book. There was a great effort to combine period artifacts, weapons and regalia and other things. Beautiful paintings specially made for the exhibit and the book. We have a number of copies of documents. We received permission from the Archivo in Seville, Spain, that people have never published before, and beautiful costumed and uniformed mannequins.
I worked real closely with Stephen Kling with a lot of research. We went by photographs, we went by actual paintings and early drawings of the period. From there, I started creating these uniforms. My day generally began as early as 2:30 in the morning, and I would work all the way until about 6:30 at night, and this is what I did for almost 3 years.
Well, there was a great effort to not only talk about the battles, which of course are part of the history, but we really wanted to focus on the people that were involved in it.
In the 18th century, St. Louis and St. Charles were really closely connected. People such as Louis Blanchette, the French-Canadian man who founded St. Charles, he was at the Battle of St. Louis. The Midwest and the Mississippi River Valley has broad connections to even the early eras of American history. So often, Missouri basically gets covered from about 1820 to 1821 for the Missouri Compromise. Other than that, though, it usually kind of gets passed over. And so when people come through here, we really want them to understand how their community came to be and how this community developed. We want them to also understand the role we had in some of the less comfortable topics of history. So we want people to understand our place in this broad narrative of American history.
What we hope people will learn from the exhibit is, one, what happened out here and led to the Louisiana Purchase and other things that helped make our country, but more importantly, to learn about the experiences people went through and that the history was broader. There was a very diverse group of people, in many respects more diverse than what was going on in the 13 colonies, and there are important stories to be told, and we do tell a number of those stories.
For more St. Louis stories, subscribe to the HEC YouTube channel. Spotlight STL from HEC Media.
This is our annual Memorial Day Parade. It's the longest running Memorial Day Parade in the country. We're so proud to be able to put this on every year for our citizens and for our residents as we honor those who continue to serve and honoring those who have served. Everyone understands and appreciates what our armed services do for our country, not just in the past, but even now. So the community really comes out, and it's a day of unity.
We have the Alton Jaeger Guard, which is a Civil War reenactment group. We have the Shriners on their motorcycle group. We have 2 of them this year. We get a service member in as a marshal every year. We have Mr. Jack Keller, who is the Korean War era service member that is our marshal. You'll also see a lot of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, youth organizations in the parade, and community organizations in the parade. People come from St. Louis to be in the parade, East St. Louis now, and Granite City, so it comes from all over, and we have a lot of people that participate in the parade.
The Memorial Day Parade was actually started in 1868 by Civil War veterans. The purpose of it initially, they wanted to lay flowers at what's now the National Cemetery, and then they walked all the way up to the cemetery we're at now and laid flowers here. So when we decided that we were going to do the parade, we knew we had to lay flowers. So as soon as we finish the parade every year, we go down there, we lay about 300 flowers on the graves of all the Civil War soldiers that are there. We represent Company A of the 9th Illinois. They were called the Alton Jaeger Guard. They were one of the first units to go to the Civil War in '61. The parade is kind of the biggest thing that we look forward to every year. We do this every year. We essentially live the life for a weekend. Alton has a very close community that loves its history. I remember the first year we did the parade, we had a lot of shocked faces. I mean, nobody had seen anything like that, and that was great. But what was even more great was today when we're marching and we're hearing people say, hey, it's the Alton Jaegers, you know, and I mean, we heard it all along the route. I get messages and emails all the time from local folks that appreciate what we're doing.
I love the parade, the ceremony, the memories. The community loves this parade. The community shows a lot of support for the parade. We started coming 37 years ago. We're back because we got a grandson now, and he's going to enjoy the parade.
Families that get together and people that come from out of town, they come home for the Memorial Day Parade and, you know, to spend time with their families and be a part of this annual tradition. And so, yeah, it brings the community together.
Stay tuned for more about the Alton Jaeger Guard later on Spotlight. You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight. It's the summer season. Outdoor living, outdoor fun. What can be better? But it's also tick season. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, tick-borne diseases are on the rise. That means if you're outdoors, you need to take precautions. Meg Gilliland knows the drill. Meg lives it because Meg is looking for it, looking for ticks of every kind.
We just take this, roll them up. These are Lone Star females, you can tell because of the circle. They are reaching out to grab onto a potential host, and because flannel is so soft and grippy, they're able to grab onto it, and then we can flip it over and look at them.
And when Meg finds it, now what?
We take them back here to the lab. We put them in our minus 80 degrees Celsius freezer to go ahead and knock them out. When by knock them out, I mean kill them. And then we also use our microscopes here to identify, categorize, pull them, and then we send them off.
This work is done at Washington University's Tyson Research Center.
We found quite a few Lone Star ticks. Abeloma americanum is the Latin name for them. We found quite a few females and males.
And after the freeze, the Lone Star ticks are sent to the lab of collaborator Whitney Anthony Sami, Associate Professor of Biology at University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy, UHSP, in St. Louis.
I have a lot of background doing molecular work, extract DNA from the ticks and from any potential bacteria in the ticks. My specific role with my students is we test these ticks for a specific bacterial pathogen that causes ehrlichiosis, which is a disease that ticks can transmit to humans, and it causes fevers and body aches, flu-like symptoms.
Anthony Sami's research with ticks evolved from her role as co-principal investigator of the St. Louis Wildlife Project, a collaboration with WashU researchers.
Well, white-tailed deer carry these ticks. You have a lot of deer in a particular site, you may have an increased abundance of ticks, and you might have an increased disease risk.
She's been working alongside co-principal investigator Solney Adel-Stenson, a senior scientist at Tyson Research Center. Ticks became part of their journey, as Adel-Stenson happens to be the tick expert. Adel-Stenson leads the center's tick and wildlife ecology team.
I work on a number of different tick projects and in collaboration with different folks in the region.
A recent tick discovery in the forests of Tyson Research Center became big news.
It's a tick the Missouri Department of Agriculture says poses a serious threat. The WashU researchers found and identified the first longhorn tick in St. Louis County. The discovery happened just like this.
I did one of my tick drags in there this summer, and that is where I found the longhorn tick. And this area right here in St. Louis County is the first occurrence.
An undergraduate researcher who was doing a project on Lone Star ticks, our most common tick in the region. She spotted the one outlier, and it was this longhorn tick. One of the groups of folks that are most concerned are livestock producers, because this tick can reach such high densities that it can kill animals purely through blood loss alone, because so many ticks will infest a single animal that they'll, effectively bleed it to death.
In Australia, New Zealand, and countries in Eastern Asia, longhorn ticks have been known to transmit diseases that impact livestock and humans.
We don't know yet if any of these individuals that have shown up in the U.S. have brought those diseases along with them.
In Missouri, the first longhorn tick in the state was collected 4 years ago. There have been 5 confirmed reports in rural counties before the one here.
We're already in a hotspot for tick-borne diseases, and there are many circulating among our native ticks. And so a big question right now is how this invasive tick is going to affect the spread of those existing pathogens.
So the tick investigations continue. If there is one, there could be more.
Ticks, whenever they reproduce a lot. And so if we found one, that probably means that there is a population here. So there's ticks in the area ambiently, but that tick was on a blade of grass questing, ready to find a host. So that puts into perspective about, the threat is real, it is there.
The team has partnered with St. Louis County on its effort to collect and identify ticks through its community science project, TickWatch STL.
It's a citizen science cooperation in which people who are picking ticks off of themselves can bag those ticks off and drop them off at locations. They can get their ticks identified, and that's also just another level of surveillance, and we help them with identification on that.
So the work goes on, one tick at a time.
There they are right there.
Later on Spotlight, the St. Louis Symphony performs America the Beautiful. History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. Soldiers Memorial Military Museum in St. Louis has a rich history dating back to its dedication in 1938. Originally built to honor St. Louisans who served in World War I, the memorial has undergone significant renovation and expansion to commemorate the service of veterans from all wars. Mark Sunlove, director of Soldiers Memorial Military Museum, sheds light on its rich history.
At the end of World War I, the city of St. Louis was looking for ways to memorialize those who had lost in service during that war. One of the fundamental features that they wanted was a memorial building. In 1923, the city and the people passed an $87 million bond issue. In today's value, that would be close to $1.5 billion. It was a tremendous bond initiative, and a lot of things that you'd expect from a city, like sewers, streets, street lighting. But they also wanted to create a memorial building and a memorial plaza. This is really one of the first land clearing initiatives of the city of St. Louis. The property between what we now know as Civil Courts Building and all the way down to Union Station was filled with 3- and 4-story buildings, factories, warehouses, homes, all kinds of different properties. And the city's vision was to buy this property up, clear it, and create both Memorial Plaza and Soldiers Memorial. And it started that work in 1923, and as things dragged on, we were soon into the Great Depression. Money got tight, construction became more difficult, and so eventually by 1936, the city reached out to the federal government under Franklin Roosevelt and his Works Project Administration and requested an additional $800,000 to finish the construction of Soldiers Memorial and the completion of Memorial Plaza. So Franklin Roosevelt came in October of 1936, stood on the corner of 13th and Market Streets, and addressed the people of St. Louis and dedicated the site and future construction of Soldiers Memorial. The visit in that photo are really astonishing. There's thousands and thousands of people leaning out of City Hall, out of the windows and standing on the ledges. You can see the city workers. You know, it's 1936 and you're not going to miss a chance to see the President of the United States has come to your town. After the visit to Soldiers, Roosevelt actually goes down to the riverfront and takes a look at what is about to become the Monument to Westward Expansion, which we all know now is the Gateway Arch National Park. Soldiers Memorial opened on Memorial Day 1938. There were 5,000 people in hand, and it was this tremendous monument to those we lost in World War I. Soon after that, we were into World War II, then the Korean War, then the Vietnam War, and all those we've lost since the Vietnam War. So to the block of the south of Soldiers Memorial, the city created the Court of Honor. And the Court of Honor is home to a tall, looming, broken bayonet statue that was sculpted by Hillis Arnold, a 30-year teacher at what we now know as Lewis and Clark Community College, along with numerous memorials listing those St. Louisans who we lost in those wars and since that time. It's a place of remembrance. It's a place to learn about St. Louis history, and it's a place to respect and honor those we've lost in service.
Next week on History Spotlight, the heroic efforts of Captain Targhee during the Great Fire of 1849 and how he helped St. Louis at the cost of his own life.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
My name is Zach Hardin, and we're the Alton Jaeger Guard. We're based in Alton, Illinois. We represent Company A of the 9th Illinois. They were called the Alton Jaeger Guard. They were German and Swiss immigrants. In '61, Abraham Lincoln requested 75,000 volunteers, and the Jaegers immediately left Alton. They went to Springfield. They were one of the first companies that was mustered into the Union Army. And the Jaegers during the war were famous among the units in the West, so it was kind of a no-brainer on who to represent. Alton's got so much history. Everybody around Alton knows that there was stuff that happened in the Civil War. Everybody knows about Elijah P. Lovejoy, but this isn't something that people really knew about. And we just thought that it was a good opportunity, more or less, to kind of address Civil War in Alton. I've always liked history, but Civil War really was interesting to me because of how they organized units based on where guys were from. So it's really neat to be able to look back at a specific unit, for example, and know that they would have walked on the same brick street, you know, that I'm walking on. We do some reenactments, but we prefer to do living histories through the National Park Service. With reenactments, that's typically what you think of when, you know, you've got a bunch of guys on either side and they kind of shoot at each other. Living histories is more where you get a smaller group and you'll focus on one specific thing or one place. We go out, we camp, the public comes out, we talk to them, we teach them about the uniforms, the equipment, a little bit of the history of the battle, a lot of the personal stuff with the soldiers. I think that's probably the main draw for a lot of guys. So during the Civil War, each company of 100 men would have been assigned 2 musicians. They wanted it to be a fifer and a drummer. Their purpose was a strictly military purpose. Based on the beat that they would play, it would tell the soldiers what commands meant so that units on the battlefield could hear, because when you have cannons and gunfire, believe it or not, you can hear a fife. So you would hear the fifers would play an order, and then the troops would move based on that order. And then typically on the march, they would put all of the musicians together to make a makeshift band, and they called it field music, and then they would play songs while on the march.
Some reenactors they'll go to an event, they'll have just their battle reenactment and other things. They don't usually do too much for like the actual camp life of what soldiers do. The good thing about the Jaegers and a lot of the campaigners is they actually utilize us as field musicians to be their alarm clock. They have us play Reveille in the morning to get them up. We play Tattoo at the end of the day to put them to bed. We play lunch, practicing dinner call, and we'll play assembly and other things like that. But a lot of people don't get to see in modern reenactments is how soldiers' lives were controlled by the field music. We are their alarm clock, and we tell them when to do everything with music.
I think honestly that's probably the biggest thing for most of the guys is just trying to kind of keep this alive, keep their memory alive. It's Memorial Day. Marching in a parade and talking about guys that went through stuff we can't imagine. It seems kind of like the least we can do.
Next week, the heroic efforts of Captain Targhee during the Great Fire of 1849, how he helped save St. Louis. Plus, helping her home country from her dining room table, how this artist is making the world more vibrant. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.